Hey, some holdover combine coverage from one of the best. This man is an elite film watcher of college talent heading into the NFL. He's Greg Cosell, executive producer of NFL Matchup and senior producer for NFL Films. Please follow him via Twitter if you are so inclined, at Greg Cosell. Many combines for you. How do they change? How do they change, and what do you enjoy about being here?
You know, I think my first one, Paul, was 1998 or 1999. And I think there might have been 3 media members there then at most, you know, and it was one of those. Back then, the league was very secretive about it, as you may recall. I know you've been doing this a long time, and it was as if it was state secrets to get any information at all. 40 times were never let out. You know, no one knew anything, and so it's really changed. Obviously, I can't remember where the turning point was. You know, it's maybe 10, 12 years. I can't remember specifically. But now, in many ways, it's almost like a mini Super Bowl in terms of the way it's covered. And so I think it's a lot of fun. It's my favorite event of the year just because, as you know, scouts, coaches, everybody in the league there, you know, there's no game Sunday, so no one is tight. You know, people are willing to chat. It's a great time.
Do you think, Greg, the combine has become every bit as much, if not more, about free agency and jump-starting conversations there, whether above board or illicitly, as much as the kids getting ready to be drafted?
I would say that's fair because free agency starts first. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's March 12th is the official date, and we know that conversations are held before then. That's just the way it works. I mean, I've spoken to a lot of coaches who haven't seen any of these players on tape yet. And these are coaches whose teams didn't even make the playoffs, so they've had a lot of time because they're focused on their own teams. You know how it works. When a team finishes the season, the first thing the coaches do is self-scout. Yep. They watch all of their tape first. Then they get into free agency. Then they get into the college players. Mm-hmm. So, obviously, scouts do it differently. Scouts' job is to obviously watch college players, but I spoke to a coach today from a team that did not make the playoffs who hasn't seen one college player on tape yet.
Right. Well, with the non-free agents, but players who could be on different teams. Myles Garrett with the Cleveland Browns. You know, he, in ballyhooed fashion, he got loud publicly that he wants to be traded. Right. He's probably going to be traded. What kind of a haul do you think it would take to get Myles Garrett for somebody?
I mean, Myles Garrett's still in his prime. He's not an old player. He's as dominant an edge player as there is in the league. That's still viewed as a premium position. Although I do think the game's changed a little bit in terms of the nature of passing games, whereas I think D tackle has really increased in value, in my view anyway, increased in value in terms of rushing the quarterback. But he would get a good haul. I mean, the guy's in his prime. He's dominant. You have to believe he gets, I don't know. You may know this better than I don't follow all those trade, rules, but you'd have to think he'd get multiple first-round picks, wouldn't you think?
Right. Yeah, and Cleveland could be in a good spot to get those picks and have the second overall pick, and maybe that's
a team that needs a lot. So I mean, again, Myles Garrett is a truly dominant player, but at some point, those are the hard decisions you have to make. It's funny. I heard Howie Roseman talk yesterday here, and obviously the Eagles have been super competitive and won this year's Super Bowl, but he kind of let on the fact that, this team's going to look different next year because you can't sign everybody.
Right. And that may include defensive tackle Milton Williams, who is a free agent. And Greg is Philly-based, and he follows the Eagles, but the league extremely closely. If Williams is able to hit free agency, I mean, is it going to be an unbelievably big deal for him? Somebody who didn't play full during the game. He was part of a rotational tackle situation, but, man, he got really good.
Yeah, I remember doing him coming out of La Tech, and I really liked him. He was one of those sort of multi-positional D linemen, could play outside, could play inside. It's always easy for people to say, well, they had Jalen Carter, so Milton Williams, he was able to feast off that. But the reality is, Paul, and you know this, you still have to win your one-on-ones. Right. And he did. And he was really, really good this year. Every single week he showed up on tape. He would win one-on-ones. I think he's a really good player. I don't know what the D tackle market bears. I don't follow the money the way a lot of people do. My guess is somebody's going to pay him a lot of money. He's a young player. and somebody's going to pay him a lot of money. And my guess is, I could be dead wrong because I don't have these conversations, but I'd probably be surprised if it was the Eagles.
Right. And throughout the years of chatting with Greg here at the NFL Scouting Combine, your analysis of quarterbacks has been phenomenal for many, many years. And, first and foremost, Cam Ward, the Miami quarterback. If Cam Ward were in last year's draft of what he's done now with Jaden Daniels and all the top quarterbacks, do you think he would have been part of that? Is he in that type of class?
It's funny. Everybody seems to be wanting to go back to last year and where would he fit. I personally think that his traits are high level, and I think that he would legitimately be in that kind of conversation. I'm trying to figure out why people are not talking about him that way. I guess most people see him as the number one quarterback in this draft. I do, by a reasonably decent margin. You're dealing with a guy that has a really live arm. He can drive the football. He can make plays outside of structure. It's funny. Last night, I was at St. Elmo's waiting to be seated, and I saw Chris Collingsworth, and we started to get into this conversation about Cam Ward. And, the way people talk about the quarterback position now in the league, you've been doing this a long time, so you've seen the evolution of the position, and he fits that. Yeah. And to me, he is a legit top quarterback prospect. I'm still trying to understand why people don't universally see him that way. And again, all we have is what he's done on tape. No one knows where he's going to go, what the future holds. You never know that. But I think based on what we know now, I'm surprised that he's not being talked about that way.
Well, I'm thinking Jalen Hurts. I mean, he's a quarterback who can run, but he's not a running quarterback.
Right.
So therefore, having the mobility factor means a lot, which means I'm guessing Shedeur Sanders is not atop your list because of the sacks he takes, maybe, or the lack of mobility. What would that be?
Well, and that raises the larger question of quarterback play in the league now. Shedeur Sanders is essentially a pocket quarterback. He's a ball distributor. He's an efficient executor of an offense. I think there's a sense that in order to be a really high-level quarterback playing that way, that you have to be really, really high level in both pre-snap and post-snap. Think of Joe Burrow, who, by the way, is far more mobile than people give him credit for. But Joe Burrow is a master of the game, both pre-snap and post-snap. The quarterbacks who are essentially ball distributors, they need team. And Shedeur Sanders may end up being a very good quarterback, but I think he's one of those guys that needs team. He's a distributor. He needs to be protected. He needs a really nice scheme. He needs a run game to be somewhat of a factor, and then I think you line him up and he distributes the football. Essentially, to use the basketball term, he's a point guard. Right. He's not a playmaker.
Well, and in looking at Greg's Twitter, at Greg Cosell, there's a Louisville quarterback that you absolutely love.
I love his tape.
Okay, you love his tape. I've never heard of the guy. So what do you like about him? And would this be QB2 for you behind Cam Ward?
Well, in terms just of college tape, yes. Now, again,
what's his name?
Tyler Shuck. Yep. Now, Tyler Shuck came out of Arizona as a high school player, as a really high-level recruit, went to Oregon, ended up getting beaten out by Justin Herbert, and then he got hurt a lot. So he played 3 years at Oregon, transferred to Texas Tech, could never finish a season, and then finally played a full season at Louisville this year. So he's played 7 years in college. He's 25 years old as we speak. My conversations with GMs is that age isn't an issue. It's more the injury history. Yeah. But his tape is good. It was very good. He's an easy thrower. He's 6'5", 225. Now, Paul, size is a trait. When you have you just had in Minnesota Sam Darnold. You saw how big he is. Size is a trait. We've accepted the fact that you can be a quality NFL quarterback if you're 6 feet and 6'1". But when you're 6'5", I remember last year, I'm fortunate enough at the Combine to get on the field, and I remember introducing myself to Drake May last year, and he's a big dude. And that really stands out when you see these big quarterbacks. And Tyler Shuck's an easy thrower. I'm sure there's polarizing viewpoints on him. Some might say, he's a career backup. I don't know the answer to that. All I know is his tape was good.
Okay, well, speaking of size with quarterbacks, when Daniel Jones ended up with the Vikings and we were standing next to him on the field before a game, I was like, holy cow, this, good arm, runs like the wind, needed to get out of a bad situation, decompress and chill on the practice squad, which he did. The O'Connell group from Cousins having wonderful years, what they got out of Josh Dobbs, of course, what they got out of Sam Darnold. If Daniel Jones had to play, if he was with the Vikings and had to play for the Vikings, shouldn't the expectation be, because of what O'Connell and his staff have done and shown, that the expectation should be Daniel Jones is going to be good?
Yeah, he's been a guy that I've struggled with, not in the sense that I thought Daniel Jones would end up being a pretty good player. I remember his rookie season. He was very, very good. And coming off that rookie season, I'm sure I was not the only one who thought he'd be a quality NFL quarterback. And obviously, there were many issues with the Giants. Their O-line has not been very good for years. I think one of the things Jones has always struggled with, and it really was exacerbated with the Giants, is he's not a great pocket mover. Now, he can run, and he's fast in a straight line, but he doesn't have that sort of feel within the pocket. And I think when your O-line is bad, you really need that as a quarterback, and that's something he doesn't do very well. And I think that really hurt him. And I think because of that, he struggled with what he saw, because there was just so much pressure, and he didn't really have a way to deal with it. And therefore, he played fast. But I always thought that he had traits to be a quality starter. Now, maybe in this offense, if he gets the opportunity, obviously they drafted J.J. McCarthy. We don't know how all this is going to play out. But if he were to get a chance in Kevin O'Connell's offense, I'd have to believe that he could be a quality starter, whatever that means.
Right. Greg Cosell is our guest, executive producer of NFL Matchup, senior producer for NFL Films, at Greg Cosell via Twitter. Now, with Travis Hunter, should he be the first overall pick in the draft?
Well, I think that depends, on the Cam Ward situation. I mean, Tennessee right now owns the number one pick. I don't think it's a state secret that the present coaching staff are not big fans of Will Levis, so they're going to need to line up with a quarterback. We'll see what they think. So then I think you're probably getting into the Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter conversation. Right. Don't forget, they just allowed Harold Landry essentially to walk. That was announced today. So, they obviously need edge players as well. So, I think you're dealing with two premium positions in the league, because I think Travis Hunter is going to come into the league as a corner, and the team that drafts him will probably use him in some packages on offense. Yeah. But I think he's going to be a corner, because normally there are far more receivers than there are high-level corners.
Right. Now, the Vikings picked 24th. Okay, they only have 4 picks as of now. Interior offensive line, interior defensive line, cornerback seem to be the 3 in vogue approaches for the Minnesota Vikings, and those are media opinions, but I think they add up to what they need. Anything jump out at you with the Vikings at 24 as to what can make them? They won 14 games last year, but to take that 14 and solidify it and make them a better January team.
Well, there's no question I think they need an upgrade on their O-line. Now, I haven't done enough interior alignment up to this point to really have, an intelligent comment about those players. I can tell you for a fact that this is a phenomenal D-tackle draft. I mean, I heard someone I really respect, in the business say that there could be 20 defensive tackles taken in the first 3 rounds.
Wow.
And would be a really high number. But it's a phenomenal D-tackle draft. So they're going to be, depending on what you like, because they come in all shapes and sizes, then it comes down to what you want. And, one great thing about Brian Flores' defense is because, and you do the games, because of how many 6- and 7-man fronts that he lines up with, you get a lot of one-on-ones. Right. So, you're looking for that guy that can win one-on-one. It's funny, you mentioned Milton Williams. I'm not saying they're going to sign him, but, you're looking for that guy that can win one-on-one, because you're going to get a lot of one-on-ones.
All right, Greg, well, think back to the 85 Bears and Buddy Ryan's 46. It was unique. Teams may mix in a 46 here and there, but like what Flores does when you have 7, 8 players strewn across the line of scrimmage, how unique is that, and how do you describe it?
Well, I think it's very hard to play against, because it really poses problems for identification, because obviously teams know that 7 or 8 guys aren't coming. They know that, but they don't know which guys are and which guys aren't. So now you get into the identification issue. And, you know, obviously some teams do it better than others. Some quarterbacks do it better than others. So when you play a team like the Vikings, it would strike me that that's a really major homework week and study, because you have to have a really good feel for what they do based on their front look and then based on the look behind it, because that's also going to tell you, how many might be coming. Yeah. So it's a major homework week. It's a difficult defense to play against. Now, they do give up some big plays. There's no question about that. You know that. But it's just a very difficult defense to play against.
Now, the time for two more with Greg Cosell, executive producer, NFL Matchup, Combine Covenant favorite of ours. The Eagles. Do you think the Eagles are set up? Do you think Howie Roseman has the Eagles set up to be the target at which to shoot in the NFC for years to come?
That's a fascinating question, because they won this year in a way that people said you really can't win, which was with a run game and a number one defense. The quarterback was not the driving force of the offense. Where he really helped the offense, and he's truly dynamic at this, is his running ability, both design runs and scrambles, particularly on third down. But they were not really a passing team, and the conventional wisdom over these last number of years, as you well know, is that the pass game has to drive your offense. So the question is, are they an aberration, or are people going to think more in these terms? Because this year there were 6 running backs that had over 300 carries. In 2023, there were no running backs that had over 300 carries. So the question is, it's not a large enough sample size for us to say that, the league is taking a turn. But in a draft where there's a lot of good running backs, it'll be interesting to see how they're valued, and if teams think that, hey, maybe the running game is a little more important than we might have thought. Not that you don't need a good quarterback. It's not either or. Yeah. And certainly Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback. Mm-hmm. That's not the point. But certainly they were not a team that, Hurts was not going 25 for 35 for 350 every week. Right. And in fact, there were weeks they won where he threw for 120 yards. Mm-hmm. So, we don't have a large enough sample size to know the answer to that, but they won in a way that has not necessarily been viewed as the way to play in the league.
Last one, Saquon was the belle of the ball last year, obviously. Yep. His backup, Kenneth Gainwell, had some injury-related situations, but throughout Kenneth's career, when given the opportunity, he's had some pop to him, and he's a free agent. What do you think of Kenneth Gainwell?
Oh, I like Kenneth Gainwell. He didn't play in the COVID year, which hurt his draft spot. I think he was a 5th-round pick. I think he would have been a 2nd or 3rd-round pick. He was a really good back in college at Memphis, if I'm not mistaken. He's a terrific receiver. He's a really good pass protector. He's probably not a foundation back, but he's a really good player. Like, he's one of those guys you want in your running back room. I mean, he's not going to, get big money, but somebody's going to sign him if it's not the Eagles, and he's going to be a factor for whatever team signs him.
You're awesome. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
That's Greg Cosell, kind of an OG NFL Combine, NFL Draft analysis. Has been all over the place in a long tenure career. High-end opinions from him. And the draft takes, the Combine opinions continue, because we're going to pause now. We're going to come back. PA also tracked down at the Combine. He works for the Houston Texans, and his name's John Harris, and he has been an analyst of the Combine and draft variety. We've had him on the show several times. Terrific work from John as well. More hardcore NFL opinions around the corner. Middle hour, right here, 9 to noon on the...
And as we head into the second portion of the Friday football feast, we thank Greg Cosell for joining us with that second to none draft-related information. And that also transpires with a man named John Harris, who I've known for several years, but had no idea until the last couple of years how sharp and or adroit and plugged in to the NFL draft the sideline analyst for the Houston Texans radio network was. He has a website called footballtakeover.com. They sell a draft guide there, footballtakeover.com, via Twitter, @JHarrisFootball. And with John, we started off with a familiar name. Not a rookie, but somebody who's there for the poaching, named Stephon Diggs. And I'm like, John, you think he'll be a Texan next year?
I really want Steph back. And I'll tell you this, we obviously came up to play you guys, and we just decided not to play that day. And so I get my interview with D'Amico at halftime, and I'm walking down a tunnel, and I can hear this voice behind me, and he is giving it to somebody. And I'm like, who is that? And I look back, and it's two of our offensive linemen, and Diggs is just giving it to him. That's the one thing I don't think that we knew we were getting when we made the trade. We heard it from some of the people in the building, but you're like, no, this guy's a leader. He's been a captain. Like, you'll see it. And he gave us that shot in the arm from a captain perspective that we didn't have. And so just for that alone, I would love to have him back because I think our offense needs that. We got a lot of quiet guys. Even CJ can be kind of quiet at times. I think we need Diggs fired. Now, the question becomes, okay, contract. What kind of contract does he want? What kind of contract are we able to give him? Because we don't have a ton of cap space right now. And so, okay, are we going to create the cap space to bring him back? There's a lot of talk about Cooper Kupp because he has a connection with our new OC, Nick Caley. So I think there are going to be options that we're going to look at. And I don't know if that'll make Steph happy or mad. I would love to have him back because I think he'll be, coming off the ACL. There was no other damage. It was just the ACL. I think guys can make it back quicker from that. So I would imagine that he'll be back and he'll be okay. It's just a matter of what's the value of the contract. And that might be a little rich for us at this point.
All right, with your website, footballtakeover.com, $2.99 a month. What do they get?
Man, they get my brain, basically. Just talking ball. I try and put up there, all the draft write-ups. And, I go to the Senior Bowl. I see these guys here at the Combine, get all that information. But I've been covering this. I think Lance Zierlein and I talked about this from NFL.com. We grew up doing this, and so I've been doing this for about 20 years. Some people have been doing it for 20 minutes, so I've been doing it for a long time. I grew up with my dad as a coach. So basically, you get my brain as much as possible. I give my Harris 100, which will be out probably after the Combine once I get taken all the notes, my full database of all the players that I maintained throughout the years. I got my 2026 already started, so I can start working on that when things kind of slow down. So it's pure football. I don't get into the fluff. I don't get into, a lot of the other things. It is just, this is what I see. This is what I think these guys can do. And I think this guy can fit your team. And so one of the things I love to do with the draft guide is look at every team in the league. And being on the sidelines, I get a chance to see these opponents up close and personal and see what they need and see, okay, like I watch your team and I'm like, hey, they don't need much, but every team needs it at some point. But it's always fun to see them down on the field and see what they've got, what I can do with, as it comes to pertains to draft as we go through. Free agency obviously changes some of it, but it's just I love college football, always have, was a coach growing up. My dad was a coach, so I just try and stay in it as much as I possibly can.
Yep, John goes deep diving, and if you're into that with the draft and the NFL, again, the website is footballtakeover.com. Is Penn State's Abdul Carter absolutely the right guy to take at 1?
Yeah, and I think the team that does take him at 1, if it is Tennessee, we'll see, but I don't want to see him in our division. But I think what Abdul being at number 1, I find interesting because there are a couple players like him in this draft. So Abdul Carter is also Jalen Walker, where you look at them and they may have started their career as a stack backer, but now all of a sudden they're so good rushing the quarterback, they're 250-ish. All of a sudden, put them on third down, put them on the edge, and with 48-man game day roster, for a guy to be able to play off the ball and then be able to slide outside. Now, with Abdul, he showed this year that he could play 100% of the time out on the edge. An explosive athlete. Now, Zach can work out here, but I think we know about the athleticism. What I think we found out with Abdul is there's football in his heart. He played in that game against Notre Dame. He had a bad shoulder. Probably should not have played in that game, and yet dominated the game. And I think that's a big deal, I think, for scouts to look at. And then you look at the Titans. Today we find out Harold Landry's, go ahead, go look for a trade because we can take this guy from Penn State. So I think Tennessee is going to weigh the options, but to me, Abdul Carter is going to end up being number 1 on my Harris 100. It's just hard to deny a guy that can play different positions on defense. He can be a 3-down player and can line up at 3 different spots if you need him to. Now, I do think the Titans will play him exclusively on the outside, but because he has experience, we saw this with Micah Parsons when we played Dallas. Micah's transitioned to a full edge. Like, he's playing on the edge full time. But then they would move Micah to a 3 technique, and he would rush against our guard, who was not as good. There were times where Micah would then stand up as a stack backer in the A-gaps and do things like that. That's the type of thing you can do with Abdul Carter because he has experience playing at linebacker position. So I think, to me, to maximize his value, you've got to be able to move him around to different spots. And I think take the Titans, if the Titans are at number 1, they're going to want to be able to do that. They're going to have to maximize his value, like Micah Parsons has been maximized in Dallas, and like Penn State used him a little bit this year. Full edge, but does have that ability to step off the ball. And I think that, everybody's going to talk about Travis Hunter. Oh, he plays both ways. That's great. Abdul Carter can play like 3 different positions for you on 3 different downs, get off the field on a 3 and out.
Okay, so with Travis Hunter, how would you respond to those who really appreciate his game, really like his game, the multifaceted nature, the quick twitch, but his long-form burst of speed? He's not exactly the fastest guy in the world. What do you think of that? Is that accurate, and do you think he'd be good for Cleveland?
I think if he ends up testing and running, I think he's going to run pretty well. I mean, you know as much as I do. How many track guys have we seen come in the league? They can run a straight line, 4.3. Oh, great. That's fantastic. I remember there was a kid at Clemson, ran a 4.3 years ago. John Ross from University of Washington. He ran, 4.27. Well, yeah, he can run from point A to point B. That's great. Everybody can cover that in the league.
Right.
But when you have a guy that has change of direction, that can stop on a dime, move, and the way that he's able to do that with the ball in his hands is impressive. But I think as a receiver, his hands are as good as anybody you're going to find in this draft. He's got tremendous glue sticks for hands. I think when he's not exhausted, he runs pretty good routes, pretty sudden routes, gets in and out of those breaks pretty well. I think a team that says, look, we're going to use him on both sides of the ball. We're not going to play him 150 plays a game. Like, you can't. You know this league, Paul. You can't play a guy 150 plays a game. You just can't do it. Now, can he get 10 to 20 more plays than somebody that played every play in defense? Sure. Play him at nickel, full-time receiver. Play him full-time corner. Let him be your slot receiver. I think there's a lot of great football skill with Travis Hunter. But the things that you'd want to see, a scout wants to see as a receiver, great hands, plucks it out of the air, body control. His body control is ridiculous. Working the sidelines, down in the end zone. He has a catch against North Dakota State at the beginning of the year where he runs kind of that pylon out route, and the ball's a little late getting there. And he literally has the DB, like you're the DB in front of the ball's coming from over here. He literally reaches around the DB, snatches it, pulls it in, and gets a touchdown. I'm like, ain't got 2 feet in. I'm like, holy crap. Like, there are not a lot of receivers in the league that can do that. So I think if a team drafts him, they got to have a plan for what they're going to do to maximize it. Because I do think he can play both. Not 100% full-time. You want to have an asset for as long as possible. You need that guy 100 plays a game. That's fine. But I've had a few scouts that tell me, like, they watch him at Colorado. They got to rep 120. He's going through the motions. Stop him at 90 to 100. Let him run back punts. He's going to impact the game in a big, big way.
John Harris, the sideline analyst for the Houston Texans radio network by day and a draft savant by night. The website is footballtakeover.com. Take a peek at that to learn more. Now, the Texans select 25. They're right behind the Minnesota Vikings. What would happen with the Vikings at 24 if both teams stay there? What would the Vikings have to do at 24 to totally snipe the Houston Texans?
Oh, there's a big one. And that would be if you guys snatched up Kenneth Grant from Michigan. If Kenneth Grant were to get to 24, which I got to think after he tests on whatever day that's going to be, Thursday, I don't think he's going to get anywhere near 24. But that would be the one. That would be the snipe move of all snipe moves, is if you guys ended up getting that guy. Because I think we've got to really improve on the interior. I think you guys probably need some interior help as well. I know we need receiver help. It's not something you guys really need. So it's not really a receiver. The other one would end up being, and I probably equal with Grant, would be Tyler Booker, the guard from out of Alabama. And I don't know if he's a great fit with what you guys want to do, if you want to continue with the wide zone and run the zone game. Tyler's more a gap scheme guard, but I talked to some people when I was at the Senior Bowl about Booker, because I want Booker badly in Houston. You saw it in our game. We were not good on the interior. We need help on the interior. To me, he is the best guard in this draft, bar none. It's Booker, and then it's converted tackles that go after him. So Booker would be the other one, and I hope you guys stay away from those two guys. My guess is Grant is not going to be even close. Booker could be, because he's a guard, and there's that. But I talked to people at the Senior Bowl, and they were like, he is a rock star in and out of the building. Like, he is, as D'Amico likes to use the word swarm, he kind of uses that as, like, his guys. I asked the guy at Alabama, I was like, because that kind of fit the quality. He's like, oh, yeah, D'Amico's going to love that guy. So Tyler Booker, to us at 25, to me, would be a dream. We've got to improve our interior. But Grant, Booker, those are the two big guys I think you guys could potentially look at that you would really – I would text you on the spot and be really, really mad at you via the Vikings.
Okay, well, what about North Dakota State University's Gray Zabel, who by some accounts stole the show at the Senior Bowl?
He was fantastic. Now, I will say, and this doesn't always have to be the case, but our staff has leaned towards more FBS guys that have played in the Power 4. But it's hard to watch Gray Zabel and not think that dude is going to step into somebody's guard or center spot and be a starter and be a 12-year guy. So if Booker and Grant are off the board and you guys took Zabel, yeah, that would be a gut punch. He's going to have to transition from tackle to guard, and we've seen that in the league a lot of times. Oh, this guy's going to do it. He's going to go from tackle to guard. That's a lot tougher than people want to make it out. Really tough. I do think he could do it. He's got a level of toughness that I saw down at the Senior Bowl. I'm like, whoa, he was calling guys out from the SEC saying, hey, step up over here, and I'm gonna whip your backside. And he did, and schooled everybody. So I think one of those three guys will be available for us. I mean, obviously, I'm sure North Dakota State fans would like him to end up with the Vikings, but if he ended up with us, I think that would be a tremendous fit for our offense and what Nick Haley's bringing to Houston.
With interior defensive linemen, if I were to tell you 20 of them will be drafted Thursday and Friday, rounds 1, 2, and 3, would that be a stretch?
No, not at all. I think it's a tremendous group. Maybe a tiny stretch, but I think this defensive line group is so good. Paul, I mean, it's got Mason Graham at the top. We talk about Grant. I think Grant's going to end up in the top 12 to 15 when it's all said and done. Tyleik Williams from out of Ohio State. Just going through the exercise of all these guys, like, my gosh, I just walked over a little while ago and saw Jordan Filch from Maryland. I'm like, he's not going to go on day 2, but he's the type of guy you look at and go, man, I'm going to get that guy in round 4. A couple years ago, I might have had to get him in round 2. So it's deep at so many different positions. Pete's sitting in front of us. He's got 2 domers that you could look at. They're not maybe the right fit, but man, they're athletic. And I don't think teams are scared now of a 280, 285 pound guy, especially with the DNA like Howard Cross has at Notre Dame. Riley Mills, hell of an athlete, coming off of surgery, but he's going to be a guy that teams end up with getting probably early day 3 because he's a hell of an athlete. So it's just everything that you want in a defensive line. You want size, guys that can move. Hey, there's Kenneth Grant. You want some dudes that are just thick, strong, violent, get off blocks. That's Tyleik Williams from Ohio State. Walter Nolan, Ole Miss, a guy that is, I mean, you talk about an athlete, but there are times Walter Nolan disappears during games. But you know how coaches are. Coaches are sitting there thinking, no, I can get it right. I can get it right with that guy. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Alfred Collins from Texas. They're all guys that are in the top 35 at a minimum. So, yeah, I think this defensive line could see that many. Now, will you have that many in, 105 draft picks? Yeah, I could see it. Right. I could see it. This is a stat class.
What about Oregon's Derek Harmon?
Oh, man. I loved watching him. I didn't get a chance to see him as much at Michigan State, maybe because the last year at Michigan State, they were kind of off the radar screen. But, man, you talk about a thick guy. Here's the other thing, too. When you start watching these guys, like I watched Harmon a little bit at Michigan State, but I watched him at Oregon, and I look over, I'm like, man, who's 90? Because 90s, you start finding those guys, and it's like, oh, yeah, that's Jamari Caldwell, who transferred from the University of Houston. Both those guys are getting drafted. So I think Harmon is one of those guys. I think I would like to see him shed a few pounds because I do think there's a level of quickness that he can still add to his game that I think would be true. I mean, that's another guy I know that we've got to end up considering because we've got to look at a ton of interior defensive linemen. And I think with Harmon, you get probably a little bit more consistency. Nolan, you can watch a game with Nolan at the Senior Bowl. It was clear. That dude had a level of twitch that was different than everybody there. But Nolan, you could play a game. Ole Miss could play a game, and you're like, you see one make a play, you see 15 make a play. Hey, where's number 2? Where's Nolan? Is he playing today? Yeah. I don't think you get that with Harmon. I think you get consistency with Harmon. Maybe not as dynamic, but I don't need dynamic. I got Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. I need a guy that inside can play the run, go one-on-one on guards, win one-on-one battles in the pass rush, and get to the quarterback.
Lastly, with John Harris, website is footballtakeover.com for draft-related speculation. There's also a draft guide you can purchase and learn more at footballtakeover.com. With running backs, Ashton Genty. Where do you think he'll go? And is there a certain type of team the Boise State running back would be best for?
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on this. He's the best running back I've studied throughout the draft. I started thinking about doing this for a while, and I'm like, Todd Gurley came to mind. Ezekiel Elliott I had a really high grade on. Saquon I had a really high grade on. But Genty, I started really diving into him in the summer because I would see his numbers at Boise State in 2023, and I do a prediction for every game. I got a player to watch for every college game throughout the year, so you also get that at footballtakeover.com. And so I'm like, I kept seeing his name. And I would go look at him like, he's born and raised in Jacksonville, where I coached for a while. Then he came to Frisco, Texas. I'm like, man, what's the deal? I go watch him, and I'm like, holy crap. What is this? What am I watching? And then, of course, he just completely blew up in 2024. And I think we get excited about, look at him break tackles, look at him do this. To me, it is, does he get to and through that hole? Because that's going to end up being an NFL-sized hole, which you and I know is not very big. Is he going to be able to get through that with minimal punishment and then be able to exact the punishment on the second and third levels? I think he's the kind of guy that can do that. I think he's going to be used a little bit more in a passing game. So, to me, I think he's going to, I don't think he goes any further than 12. He's from Frisco. Dallas is sitting at 12. I think Dallas's running game last year, I think Rico Dowdell did better than everybody expected. This is Genty, and I think Genty wants to go to the Cowboys. That would probably be the lowest that he would go. But I think anybody that wants in, look, what did we learn about last year in the NFL? Running backs, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Joe Mixon for us, they give you a little extra boost. And I think looking at Genty, another 50 receptions to what he's doing, he's going to be an all-pro before too long.
That's John Harris with PA at the Indianapolis Scouting Combine, not only sideline analyst for the Houston Texans, but you can check out, you heard the football opinions, and you can check them out in more detail, footballtakeover.com. Always appreciate John spending time with PA at the Combine. Kevin Lynch will kick off the final hour at 11, but some news is next, 9 to noon. News to Nord brought to you by The Casino at Canterbury Park, CanterburyPark.com. And feeling the felt, poker, blackjack, and table games all year round. Live racing just a couple of months away. Looking forward to that. You can go and watch the Derby. You can go and watch the warm-up races. You can have a blast all year round at Canterbury Park down in Shakopee. The Minnesota Wild get cooked last night, 6-1 by Utah. They're back at it again tonight, 8 p.m.-ish puck drop. Wild at the Colorado Avalanche. And I'm excited that Kevin Lynch is going to come into studio as the Minnesota Timberwolves lose 111-102. The good side, it's good times, bad times with the Howl. The good times is Terrence Shannon Jr. had his best game in his young career. Led the team in scoring with 25 points, 9 of 15 from the floor. Love seeing the 6 of 6 at the line from the rookie. The bad news, of course, is Anthony Edwards receiving his 15th and 16th technical of the season, and he was ejected from the game. We are going to dig into that hardcore howl in the final hour with one of our finest and one of our favorites. It is going to be Kevin Lynch in studio. I want to hit you with this, though. NFL-wide news. A lot of people are following Matt Stafford, PA. So the Rams, I don't believe there's been any official notice or any official moves, but the rumblings are becoming roars in terms of Stafford's future with the Rams. And there was news that was percolating early in the week about Matt Stafford just kind of hanging out in Colorado. He's on vacation. He's doing a little resort. It's the postseason. Montana, excuse me. And wait a minute. Tom Brady's there. Well, was that a meeting that was planned, or was it just two guys that have the same taste in off-season places to chill, and they just happened to bump into each other? Well, that news is continuing to build on the idea that maybe the Raiders want him. The Raiders think they could figure out a contract deal for him. The Rams, maybe that helps them figure out, actually, here's how we're going to deal with it and stay. A lot of people talking that it's more likely now that Stafford would indeed stay with the Rams. Now, it is interesting to note the last time I think Matt Stafford was in a Willie stay, Willie go situation, that being during his time at the end with the Detroit Lions, I think he was like down in Mexico and ran into Sean McVay. And not too much longer after that.
Are you kidding me?
He was a Ram. Yes.
Oh, geez.
So, who knows? Maybe, maybe a guy just wants to look you in the eyes and shake your hands at a lavish resort before signing on the dotted line. Who knows? But this is all coming back to the Combine, PA. I sent you this because I was following. I was at home the last couple of days with the babe. The Starbucks bit. The JW Marriott Starbucks, which has been the subject of much morning pick-me-up as we make the walk, the trek to either Lucas Oil Stadium or to the large convention center area where Radio Row is over the years. The thing's been under construction like 6 different times, it feels like.
Oh, it's done. It's nice now. It's expansive.
Oh, sweet. The line's like a mile long, and it's truly a who's who, right? We'll be doing interviews on that second floor, a bit off to the side, down the walkway. But it's a hustling, bustling area, which, one of many with the NFL Combine. But the dust up. I want to know where you were at that moment on Wednesday afternoon. I saw the article from PFT, and I immediately had to get on the horn with you as I heard that NFL reporter from Fox, I believe his name's Jordan Schultz.
Yep.
He got face-to-face, which is tough because Ian Rappaport is not the tallest guy that's ever walked the earth.
He's 5'5".
He got face-to-face in the face of Ian Rappaport of NFL Network because Jordan Schultz was reporting on this meeting potentially between Stafford and Tom Brady. Schultz was kind of efforting or intimating the idea that this was potentially a planned thing, that this is big news, what's going on in the offseason. Stafford meeting with Tom Brady. Tom Brady, of course, a minority owner with the Raiders. And Ian Rappaport had apparently either mocked the report or certainly dismissed it as being a nothing burger, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And Jordan Schultz got after him at the JW Marriott Starbucks to the point where security was called. They were worried that it might turn physical. Reports are that Jordan Schultz was swearing, a lot of F-bombs being thrown in the way of Rap Sheet.
Yep. Rap
Sheet, get out of my face. And it's been quite the buzz at Indy, deep position groups, and who's going to perform the best at the Combine. How about a couple of insiders getting after it at the JW Starbucks? Where were you in that moment? What do you think of the whole thing?
Well, I don't know where I was at the moment, probably in the Radio Row area. And earlier that day, I got shut down by Ian. I mean, I saw Ian.
I always love that one.
Walking around the Radio Row area, and everything was copacetic, and everybody seemed to be chill. Now, I don't know if this guy is the founder of Starbucks or if he's like the CEO. But Jordan Schultz's father...
He's related to, I think, the either former CEO or founder, yeah.
I mean, well, that's the A topic. I mean, it's attaboy, son. Attaboy, big boy. Well done. I mean, Starbucks is housing, I don't know, with radio, TV, and print and internet. $1 million in free advertising? Attaboy, Jordy. But Rappaport... I mean, I don't have confirmation on this, but it feels like, you're dealing with Jordan Schultz from Fox. All right. Raise your hands if you exactly know who Jordan Schultz from Fox is. I had no idea. And I think he's their lead, investigative guy or their lead breaking news guy on the Fox pregame show. Cool. Good for Jordan. Ian Rappaport. That's quite the familiar name. I just wonder if this interaction began with Jordan. Now, Ian's chatting with an agent. Jordan bum rushes the meeting, wants to get into it over some tweets. And I don't have confirmation on this, but I'm just wondering if Ian began it with and you are again?
I always love that one.
And then that immediately would set him off. Oh, come on, you know who I am. And, then the 2025 snowflake generation, nonsensical pillow fight those two had back and forth on Twitter. And then .com Tom jumps in, getting the back of his guy Ian.
Oh, yeah.
And then Jordan gets louder. it was just it's not of the macabre. It's just of tomfoolery and skullduggery. Copyright Dan Cole, the common man. But Ian seemed to keep his wits about him. Didn't seem to go Anthony Edwards on it. And but then Ian told NFL security. I'm not a fan of that. I'm not telling NFL security.
Can we just shake hands and move on?
That's it, man. Just walk away. I mean, it's like he narked on somebody. It's like he told on somebody. But that's okay. He has a right to do that. And maybe he legitimately felt threatened. But I don't think anything will come of this. And when NFL security is on you, you don't want NFL security on you, man.
No.
Now they're going to be talking to the agent. Well, then it's like if the agent says something even slightly wrong, well, then that could get into a tampering thing involving like who's going to catch a stray out of this whole thing. But it was humorous to read about it. It was more humorous to watch or follow. How do you put this? Those who just have a very, very high opinion of themselves going back and forth on social media to try to urinate on a metaphorical fire hydrant to like make that territory theirs, draw a proverbial line in the sand here. I do believe Jordan, and I think Jordan had it right out of the gate. I just find it highly unlikely that on the same day, at the same resort, at the same time, people are going to go skiing. Matthew Stafford and Tom Brady just happen to run into each other.
Right. They're just like they were waiting for the same elevator. That's unbelievable odds if that is indeed the case.
Yeah. Hey, you jump on a ski lift. Hey, you're not some rube here from Texas looking for a getaway. You're Tom Brady. Let's start talking about what's next.
Just like Matt Stafford just accidentally reserved the same beach chair next to Sean McVay a number of years ago prior to joining the Rams.
I didn't know that. That's unbelievable because here, you see, the NFL, Brian McCarthy, who's a spokesperson for the NFL, he quickly, he was pressed by Florio and some others, and he quickly came out and said, well, there's no problem with this, this meeting, whether it was happenstance or organized, because the Rams have made it known that if Matthew and his agent want to talk about a deal, Matthew and his agent can talk about a deal.
Yeah.
So the tampering bit goes by the wayside. Now, Ian starting this thing with, and I'm sorry, excuse me here. You are, what's your name again? I don't know if he did that, but something got the Fox guy triggered. And the latest update on this is that Matthew Stafford, Florio reported earlier, ProFootballTalk.com, Stafford and Brady and or the Raiders have kind of gotten together on a contract that they could have if a trade can be consummated between the two teams. Diana Rossini has reported recently, she's with The Athletic and TheAthletic.com, that Stafford is meeting with the Rams today. I don't know if it's a super special Zoom or Teams or Hulu or Fubo, but or in person. But Stafford is set to meet with the Rams today. The quarterback and or his representatives have also had conversations with the Giants and Raiders this week. So, look how she handled that. Just straight and professional. No reason to be in a Starbucks line and start yelling at Diana Rossini just in case conversations with the Giants happen to be of the text message variety or something.
That's News du Nord, brought to you by The Casino at Canterbury Park, CanterburyPark.com, PA.
Kevin Lynch from FanDuel played in the NBA for nearly half a decade, former Mr. Basketball in the state of Minnesota. He's going to join us in studio to chat about Anthony Edwards, the Minnesota Timberwolves, and more, and that's next on KFAN.